This actually happened last month. It only gained national news attention here in the past couple of days. Why is that?
Right, most murders in the U.S. never become national news. This one's garnered attention for a couple of reasons. Number one, first and foremost, the recent release of that gruesome video. Second, the energy from pro-Trump activists. They picked up on this video from local news and ran with it. It's a little bit like the times when civil rights groups have raised attention about police-involved shootings. In this case, it is Trump-aligned influencers who are posting up a storm about this case on social media. Really, over the weekend, Elon Musk, Charlie Kirk, other Trump-aligned figures succeeded in making this senseless death a symbol of big city crime. We heard President Trump asked about it yesterday when he was heading home from New York City. He didn't seem to know much about it. He said he would get briefed, and then today Trump did know all about it. That's exactly what has happened here. This story has trickled up from local news to social media and now to the president's attention, and it's being used, as you said, Brianna, as a political symbol, with MAGA media calling for more forceful punishments and more incarceration. I have to say, some of the replies to Musk, some of the comments around this story are baldly racist, stoking fear of African Americans because this man attacked a white woman. The open racism on sites like X today, it's eye-popping. But there are also legitimate questions about this so-called career criminal, someone who had been a repeat offender. And those questions, I hope they're not lost amid all of the cesspool kind of comments on social media.
After ignoring the North Carolina stabbing for weeks because it doesn't fit the leftist mainstream media on crime, they are now forced to acknowledge its existence simply because the video has gone viral online and caused a visceral reaction. However, of course, what's been happening is rather than focusing on the mental illness and the black on white crime aspect, the left is going to try to spin this and say, oh, it's all about racism. Okay. And that's exactly what Greg Gutfeld is going to point out with Brian Stelter being completely torn apart in this little rant. So before we begin, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
Lunatic just got up and started. It's right on the tape. Not really watchable because it's so horrible, but just viciously stabbed. She's just sitting there. So they're evil people. We have to be able to handle that. If we don't handle that, we don't have a country.
So that was President Trump reacting to a horrific story out of Charlotte, North Carolina. A career criminal, 14 prior arrests, fatally stabbing a Ukrainian refugee in the neck, completely unprovoked, as she sat just minding her own business after she was working all night on the city's light rail. Iryna Zarutska had fled the war in Ukraine, and she was looking for safety here in America, and she embraced the USA. And then she became a victim of America's revolving door of violent criminals. The city's Democrat mayor, she seemed to be more concerned over whether people were sharing the video online. Greg, the life of the Ukrainian refugee is worth pausing for a moment, or many more moments over. She escaped Putin, embraced the United States, got a job at a pizzeria, was in her uniform, taking public transit on her way home afterwards, and then this guy just stabbed her in the back.
Yeah, but you know what's worse than her murder? According to Brian Stelter, it's posting on social media. That's where he concentrated his concern, his antipathy, and then he says, but it's okay to question it as long as you're Brian Stelter, a fat white guy who should be fired again at CNN. He is one of the reasons why these crimes happen, because anytime you dare question crime, it's jerks, scumbags like him that call you a racist. I'm tired also of the term mental illness being used as a cover for criminality. When a thug targets a woman, that is not insane. He knows she's weaker. When he comes from behind with a knife, that's not insane. He minimizes her ability to inflict harm on him. When the thug flees, that's sane because he knows if he stays, he'll be arrested. So what would be insane would be if he were to face off against a man without a weapon, somebody like a terrorist. That would be insane. You'd go, okay, that's crazy. But almost all of these people that do this stuff, they go after women. That is not insane. That's self-preservation. This is not insanity. It's an evil mind. And it's an evil mind that is somehow excused in a culture that weaponizes victim status, in this case, mental illness. And what is it about a society that contributes to this? And I say this based on my own personal evidence of being on city streets every single day in New York, that when a homeless person is shouting at people, he's not shouting, "I really made a mess of my life. Boy, I really screwed up." No, his aggression is purely blaming other things and other people. He blames the world, he blames people, he blames you. So we're living in a progressive ideological nightmare where the worst in society is empowered by a sense of victimhood. So when this happens, they will still get people like Brian Stelter that says, "Oh, be careful of the racism," or other people saying, "You know what? We really need to be concerned about our services to the mentally ill," which may or may not be true, but he's not mentally ill. He needs to be executed. Lastly, I asked Grok for a conservative count of the number of times the George Floyd video was played, looking at tweets and social media, Instagram, news networks. It came to a conservative number of 975 million times. That is not counting retweets. So that is a snapshot of this liberal disease, the hierarchy of problems. The media and politicians, people like Stelter, implore you not to cover one problem, but to amplify another one to a destructive degree that leads to riots, leads to dozens of deaths. But do not cover this other thing because that is racist. And that is not as important. In the hierarchy of problems, we decide what you cover.
So that's a great point brought up by Greg Gutfeld right at the end. You're not allowed to talk about this in terms of the racial component or, of course, the mentally ill component, because that might cause some type of anger or hatred or violence out in the real world. And yet, at the same time, when they're going 24/7 about George Floyd, that actually caused violence. That actually caused riots. That actually caused death and destruction in this country. But that's totally okay. But this one, don't have any type of other component about it other than sympathy for the man who committed the crime. All right. This is completely insane. And of course, what I want to point out is there was complete radio silence on this story. I remember seeing this a couple of weeks ago, and admittedly, it wasn't as powerful because it was just text, right? We have Ukrainian refugee stabbed by crazy black man on train. Then the video comes out, and holy crap, it is brutal. Okay. And it took the governor, Josh Stein of North Carolina, a full 2 weeks to respond to this. All right. Just from yesterday. I am heartbroken for the family of Iryna Zarutska, who lost their loved one in the senseless act of violence. And I'm appalled by the footage of her murder. We need more cops on the beat to keep people safe. That's why my budget calls for more funding to hire more well-trained police officers. I call upon the legislature to pass my law enforcement recruitment and retention package to address vacancies in our state and local agencies. So, of course, he uses this tragedy to stump for his own political gain. But here's the problem, right? He says he wants more cops, but by his own admission and studies, that's not really what he's been after. Because if you look at some of these responses, what on earth are you talking about, Governor? DeCarlos Brown was arrested 14 times. The police did their jobs. It's your job to sign into law bills that keep career criminals in jail. So yes, he's saying, we want to have more cops, which is always a good idea. But guess what? The cops were doing their job by arresting this guy over and over and over again. It's just the revolving door of Democrat and liberal judges that allow these people out that, of course, keep the crime wave going. Other responses down here, Governor, your task force for racial equity in criminal justice specifically called for increasing pre-trial release and decriminalizing public behavior, meaning homelessness and being a public nuisance, right? This is the type of stuff that Governor Josh Stein has been advocating for, right? He had this commission to come out and say, hey, we want to study the inequities, etc. And of course, their final report included, hey, we want to eliminate cash bail for low-level nonviolent offenses. Yeah, this guy actually had violent offenses in his past. And of course, we want to address fines and fees. The report called for addressing the disproportionate effects that financial obligations have on low-income and minority defendants, right? How about we have actual deterrence for crime, whether it's financial or staying in jail? That sounds totally fine to me. And alternatives to financial bonds. The task force also pushed for alternatives to financial bonds that would allow more people to be released before trial. out. So guess what? You do a violent crime, we want to get you back out on the street while we're pending that trial update, which may of course never actually happen because for whatever reason, these big cities have decided to destroy themselves by allowing repeat offenders and career criminals back out on the street. And this is where I'm going to break with Greg Gutfeld a little bit because this guy actually was insane, as we can see from previous arrests. Okay, his mother told local television that she sought an involuntary psychiatric commitment earlier this year after he became violent in home and doctors diagnosed him with schizophrenia. All right, and he was arrested repeatedly for calling 911 from a hospital, claiming people were trying to control him. And of course, the judge released him without bail. And of course, records show that he had cycled through the criminal justice system for more than a decade with 14 prior cases in Mecklenburg County, including 5 serving years for robbery with a dangerous weapon. Okay, so this guy has a past. He has been arrested. He's a repeat offender. He's got mental problems. But of course, what is the Democrat solution for all of this? Don't put them in jail and definitely don't place them in a mental institution to keep the rest of the public safe. No, leave him on the street to terrorize the public. That's the only solution the Democrats have on this topic. Now, of course, we also have the black on white crime aspect of this story, all right, which Brian Stelter says, oh, this is hateful. You don't want to talk about it, even though we all notice this is actually happening. Now, if you actually look at some FBI statistics, right, as much as the left mainstream media wants to deny this, from 2019, I do want to point out that, yes, most white people commit crimes against white people and most black people commit crimes against black people. However, when you look at the actual rates of homicide, when you have the black offender and the white victim, it's about a 17% committal rate. Okay, but when you look at it in reverse, white offender on black victim, it's about 8%. All right, so for whatever reason is out there in America, you have black people committing twice as much homicide against whites as you do whites against blacks. So of course, this is a problem that should probably be addressed at some point. But the whole topic, of course, can't be broached. And if you bring it up on X, etc., then you're the problem. You're the racist out there in the country. So of course, this stuff has to stop because the Democrats are setting up a horrible system and precedent for revolving doors for criminality and, of course, allowing mentally ill people to terrorize the public by saying you have a right to be on our city streets. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me. Do you like t-shirts? Of course you do. And now you can support the channel by buying an Angry Teacher t-shirt designed by me, Angry Teacher. So if you like America, if you like freedom, if you like liberty, then go ahead and click the link in the description where all designs, of course, are 100% mother approved. So enjoy yourself and find something you like today.